And my first guest tonight, escalating U.S.-Iran situation, is a special guest, Ambassador John Bolton, former assistant to the President for National Security Affairs. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Bolton. You know President Donald Trump better than most. When he says, as he has done today, that the U.S. is considering the strongest possible options if the crackdown continues in Tehran. What do you make out of it? What are these strong options that the president could be considering?
Well, I think clearly military force is a possibility. The president announced last night that there would be tariffs of 25% on any country trading with Iran, which in India's case would raise it now to 75% tariff. So that's a sort of extraordinary economic statement. But given the fact the U.S. did use force against Iran's nuclear program along with Israel last year, I think the threat of military force is real. Whether he decides to do it or not, obviously we don't know yet.
But when you say that the threat of military force is real, what are we talking about? Targeted strikes on Iranian military or government sites that aim to topple the regime? Or surely a military operation against a country like Iran is fraught with risk. So what, according to you, is the most conceivable, feasible military option here?
Well, it would be nice if Trump had an objective. If his objective was regime change, that would give you one potential set of targets. If it's just to make a demonstration in support of the protesters in Iran, that might be something else. I think regime change should be the objective. So I would advise that he go after headquarters of the Revolutionary Guard, again, the nuclear program, the ballistic missile program. But with Trump, we don't know what his objective is. And I don't think it's enough just to simply have a military strike and say, there, see, we supported the protesters, unless it's linked to a bigger program.
But can I push you on that, Ambassador Bolton? Because if I were to contrast what the U.S. did with Venezuela, a country not located too far away from the U.S., you could argue within the Western sphere of influence, the so-called Donroe doctrine that is being spoken about. Contrast that with Iran, at the heart, in a way, of West Asia, a country thousands of miles away from the United States. Are you seriously saying the United States could actually push for a militarily for a regime change in Iran that would be acceptable in a way to the countries across the world?
Well, I think it might be acceptable to the resistance, to the opposition in Iran. People said if the U.S. ever attacked Iran's nuclear program, it would rally the people of Iran to the side of the regime. There'd be turmoil all over the Middle East. Well, last year we did, and today in Iran, the people are out in the streets chanting "Death to the Ayatollahs." So I think that there's good reason for this, not just the oppression of the people of Iran, but there never is going to be strategic stability and peace in the Middle East as long as the Ayatollahs are in charge in Tehran. Now, whether Trump will adopt that view, I don't know, but he certainly left the door open to it with his recent remarks.
But how do you then interpret how the Iranians are looking at it, Ambassador Bolton? Iran says all channels of communication with the U.S. are open, but it is ready for war if Washington wants to stress it, and Iran is prepared for all options. Do you see Iran retaliating fiercely if the United States chooses, as you say, the possible objective of regime change? Is that something that might make the Trump administration a little reluctant to take that maximalist option right at this stage?
Well, the Iranian government has certainly threatened retaliation. That's true, and the use of military force can be graduated. You can take out the headquarters of the Revolutionary Guard, but not much else. I mean, I think we will certainly destroy whatever remaining or new air defenses Iran has put in since the 12-day war. But the fleet, the Iranian fleet in the Gulf might be another target. Again, the Iranians threatened retaliation as we were striking the nuclear weapons program. And after that was over, they did exactly nothing. So their capabilities have been degraded, not just by the U.S. attack, but more by the Israeli attack, which lasted for 12 days against ballistic missiles and against other military targets. The people in Iran, by the way, read those attacks as being very specifically targeted, and is indicating that if the regime couldn't protect its nuclear weapons program, its crown jewel, that the regime's days were numbered. And I think that was an accurate reading.
So do you believe the regime's days are numbered, that the peaceful protesters are actually large enough now to actually be in a position to remove the long-standing clerical elite of Iran? Do you believe that these protests are not just another expression of dissent? They're much more than that?
I think the regime is at its most unpopular point since taking power in 1979. And I think the gravity of the situation is demonstrated by how repressive the regime has been in reacting to it. The media reports hundreds killed this past weekend. I've heard around the country that number's really in the thousands. We've seen this kind of approach before, but the regime hasn't toppled. I just think it's weak enough now, approaching the point where they're going to have to pick a new supreme leader pretty soon. That would be a point of maximum danger for the regime. And it's why I think help from the outside, from the United States and from others, if it's done properly and in coordination with the opposition, could have a major impact this time.
Can I just turn back to a point you made about tariffs? The president, of course, Trump has warned that any country doing business with Iran will face a new tariff of 25% on its exports to the US. Now, this could have, as you said, bearings on countries like India. It could also affect the Chinese, for example. Do you believe that weaponizing tariffs is the right way forward, considering that already Tehran's economy is strained, inflation 48.6%? Will that affect the view of the people of Iran, or do you believe tariffs are a legitimate way to put pressure on the Iranian regime?
Well, if we followed our constitution, they might be, but we may hear from the Supreme Court in the next few days that these tariffs are unconstitutional. This is a threat by Trump. It actually hasn't been put in place. I think what we should be doing is clamping down on Iranian oil sales in violation of our sanctions. We've seen in the case of Venezuela going after what has been called the ghost ships or the ghost fleet, these rust bucket tankers that carry sanctioned Venezuelan oil, sanctioned Iranian oil, sanctioned Russian oil. If we could eliminate the ghost fleet, it would put enormous pressure on all three of those countries.
But how would you respond to those who are saying that members of the Islamic State have been dispatched into Iranian territory to execute terrorist attacks, that US is involved in information warfare, covert operations? Is the United States running any risks by the kind of escalating war of words that it is intervening in Iran's internal affairs? Whether a regime has to be toppled has to be decided by the people of the United States, not by the White House?
Well, I think there's zero chance we're doing anything with the Islamic State other than trying to eliminate it in Western Iraq and Syria. I think certainly clandestine action against Iran is something that would be on the table, if not for us, for Israel. And I do believe, because of the threat that the Iranian nuclear weapons program, ballistic missiles, its support for international terrorism, its threats to murder Iranian exiles and present and former U.S. government officials, myself included, constitute plenty of legitimate grounds to overthrow the regime, which I think would be the one way you could see Iran returning to the community of nations in the way that it occupied before the 1979 revolution.
A final question then. There are two views of how Donald Trump conducts foreign policy, Ambassador Bolton. One is that he's a disruptor and does things when you least expect him to do it. The other is that Trump always chickens out, that while he may engage in this escalating war of words with the Iranians, there's only so far he'll go to without actually going the whole hog. What's your sense? Do you believe that Donald Trump this time means business when he says we are prepared to exercise all options, including the military one?
Unfortunately, we don't know because he doesn't think in terms of grand strategy. He doesn't have a philosophy. He doesn't even do policy the way we normally understand that term. His decisions have been described accurately as transactional, ad hoc, episodic, and seen through the prism of what benefits Donald Trump. He may feel, in the case of Iran, a country he's been concerned about. He opposed the 2015 nuclear deal in his first campaign for president. This could be a moment when he sees it to be in his advantage to take very strong action against the government. I think we'll know within a few days.
And will he have the full support, you believe, or a majority support within the United States if he were to strike on Iran at this moment?
Yeah, yes, I do. I mean, I think, again, the support for the strike against the nuclear facilities, some members of Congress complained about it, but everybody thought the world was a safer place with those facilities destroyed. And I think the world would be a safer place if the regime were replaced by a government that was responsive to the people of Iran.
Ambassador John Bolton, for joining me there and giving us a perspective on that. Thanks very much, former Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.